Good afternoon. The Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust for March the 5th will be in order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for February 19th. Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there comments or questions? Hearing none, voting please. Minutes are approved.
Mr. Chairman, could we move item 5?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting ready to do. The next item, I think we can just move it to the front of to the head of the rest of the docket. Item 5E is an item changing the name of, or actually naming the trails at Lake Hefner, the Burt Cooper Trails, which is a great idea, I think. And do we have a resolution or something that we could? Is it in here? Yeah, here it is. We have if we why don't just have the clerk read the resolution right now.
Whereas the Board of Directors of Oklahoma City Beautiful has submitted a request that the trails at Lake Hefner be named the Burt Cooper Trails in honor of the late Burt Cooper. Whereas the section of trails at Lake Hefner currently named the Burt Cooper Loop would not be affected by this action. Mr. Cooper was a board member of Lake Hefner Trails, Inc. and of Oklahoma City Beautiful. Whereas the request stated that Mr. Cooper was a major force behind the completion of the trails and that in 1993 he helped secure a substantial grant award for trail improvements and expansion. According to the request, Mr. Cooper also helped to plan and organize many races at Lake Hefner that raise thousands of dollars annually to support the trails. Whereas Oklahoma City Beautiful has suggested that the naming would honor Mr. Cooper's dedication and commitment to the trails at Lake Hefner. And whereas, consistent with the requirements of the city's park naming and renaming policy, the Oklahoma City Park Commission first considered this request in a public meeting on December 19, 2012. Whereas on February 20, 2013, following the required 30-day public comment period, the Park Commission voted to recommend that the City of Oklahoma City approve the naming request. Whereas the trails at Lake Hefner are on property leased to the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust, and whereas the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust has been asked to make a recommendation on the request. Now therefore be it resolved by the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust to recommend the City of Oklahoma City approve a request by Oklahoma City Beautiful to name the trails at Lake Hefner the Burt Cooper Trails in honor of the former Lake Hefner Trails, Inc. and Oklahoma City Beautiful board member, Burt Cooper.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion and a second on the resolution. Are there comments or voting, please? Resolution is approved. I want to tell you that I see Ms. Cooper's here, and I want to tell you that from my standpoint, Burt was around when I was around councilman the first time, and he was an absolute shining light for Oklahoma City. I met, in all the time I've served in public office, I've met very few people that I thought were his peer. He was a very remarkable person, and this is well deserved, and probably ought to be more than this, because he was extremely important to Oklahoma City, and the kind of activities that he fostered, I think, will be with us for generations to come. I appreciated him so much. Good to see you here too. Will this go before the council for? There'll be another one more formal than this with you on TV and all that stuff, and that'll be coming up in a week or two. I very much appreciate you being here, though, and I appreciate him too. He was a great guy. Surely. You just come to the microphone. So.
I was asked if I had any comments to make, and I said no. But I would like to say thank you so much. Bert would have been very honored. And I know he worked very hard on it for many years, at a time when, surprising today, that it was not exactly it was not necessarily a well-received idea at the time that it was started. And so he put a lot of heart and dedication into it, and appreciate so much your willingness to recognize him this way. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go back to the regular agenda. The next item on the agenda is the consent docket.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda subject to individual consideration. There are a number of items. Any of them need to be discussed separately?
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of minor questions.
Okay.
On item 3B is a project to put an emergency generator in at a pump station. Do we have a regular schedule to test those devices?
Yes, sir.
What kind of fuel are we going to use there?
I think that these are unfortunately diesel. Sam? At Winter?
Plan to use diesel?
Diesel.
Yeah.
And the second is on item 3L, and it has to do with some work out at the Hefner Water Treatment Plant. And the project seems to be moving along. How do we stand on that project? There's lots of materials stacked up around the plant.
There are. The project is going all right. It will not be available for us this summer, but pieces and parts are available that will make operation a little bit easier. So we have one more summer to go through without having this 25 million gallons a day of capacity. But at this point, we're scheduled for this fall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments on the consent docket? Hearing none, voting please. Consent docket is approved. Next item is a concurrence docket.
Move approval subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the concurrence docket. Are there comments or questions about either of the two items on the concurrence docket? Hearing none, voting please. Concurrence docket's approved. Next item, item 5, a series of matters to be considered individually. The first one and the second one and the third one are all deferred until March 19th. These have to do with the Quail Ridge matter, and I will tell you that these are being deferred because we're searching for a better solution. And had some news this week that maybe there's a reason to be somewhat optimistic about a better solution. So appreciate that. But they're all deferred. I guess I need a motion to defer all three of them.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to defer items A, B, and C. Voting, please. Those are deferred until March 19th. Next item, item D, is a joint resolution of the city authorizing the city manager to suspend issues of wet slip rental permits at Hefner.
Mr. Chairman, I thought you might like to hear a couple of comments. What we're asking you today is to give me the flexibility to cancel the boating season this year if it becomes necessary. Lake Hefner has benefited from rains and release from Canton and is at 1193.7 feet today. Full is 1199. This is a very good position to be in going into a normal spring, but we're expecting a dry spring after March. So the question is, when we start the season by taking applications for rental the 1st of April, will there be enough water in the lake that we can say, yes, it probably won't be grounded during the course of the summer? Today, based on the weather forecast in general and the rainfall forecast specifically, I don't think that we will be. But my intention is to hold off any decision as long as possible. We'll monitor the weather and see whether we get a different trend. We're at an El Nino, La Nina neutral position, which apparently is part of what's holding the rainfall up. A move one direction or the other would help us know that better than we do at this particular moment in February, or in March, pardon me.
Any other comments, questions? Have a motion?
Move the item.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on item 5D. Voting, please. 5D is approved. We've already done the E. Next item is executive session. I do not believe we need executive session.
No.
Move to strike.
Motion to strike.
Second.
And a second to strike item F. Item is stricken. Next item is items from trustees.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on the water conservation effort we're undertaking now. Is the construction of additional swimming pools sort of contrary to what our theory is on water conservation?
I'm sorry, Mr. Wisenhunt left. Swimming pools do evaporate water, just like our lakes do, at probably about the same rate, which is a net of somewhere between 24 and 60 inches a year. We had not considered recommendations to stop any construction or planned construction, and we're open to policy direction.
Do you think that would be a significant amount of water in total if we suspended, for instance, permits on swimming pools?
No, sir, I don't.
No, alter egos is shaking his head also. So.
It's good when we agree.
Two no's, I'll accept that. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from trustees?
Yeah, Marcia, can you talk to us a little bit about the release from Canton and capture rate and the snowfall that's out there and how you talked a little bit about the elevation of Hefner, but talk about what our rate was and then how much. I know that Canton is somewhat higher because of the additional rainfall and snow melt that we've had up there. It's not in good shape, but it's higher than we thought it would be at this point in time.
It is. The Canton gained water as we were releasing. That we released 30,000 acre feet. The lake declined only about 27,000 acre feet. That's still a gracious amount. We received water right around 70% of the total release. We received around 21,000 acre feet into Lake Hefner. And then we gained some water because of the snowmelt. A lot of the snowmelt stayed in western Oklahoma, which is not a bad thing by any means. It can, again, is up another half foot just from the snow. So it's sitting at about 10.5 feet low today, I believe. I'll double check.
So how much higher is that than we anticipated that would be?
It's about 2 feet higher
2 feet higher.
than we were expecting when the original estimate was made.
But the fear about the 3 pools of water and such is not realized as of yet.
That's correct.
Obviously, if we continue the drought and we get a really tough, you could get into that situation.
That's
but
correct.
It's not in that situation.
And we remain in exactly the position that people are always in at this stage of a drought, not knowing when it will end, or how we might actually get a great runoff from a single storm that will help things, even though the drought is not ended.
Is there a rule of thumb to help us if there's an inch of rain in a basin that we capture 6 inches of elevation or 1 foot of elevation here, or Canton, or what metrics do we use?
There are some rules of thumb. I'm not prepared to talk about that, but I'll bring you back some more information about that. A lot of it depends upon how fast the rain comes. It's exactly like you see at your house. If it's a gully washer, it's a lot of rain is coming all at once, and the rain's running off because it can't soak into the soil. Well, we know that we're about 22 inches behind on rainfall over the last 2 years, so we have definitely drier soils, and again, that heavy snowfall that they got in western Oklahoma probably really helped moisten some of the soil better than a rainfall during the same period would have. But exactly when it starts running off, it takes one of our other scientists to talk about that for you.
That's fine. The point is there's a lot of moving parts to that calculation.
Yes, sir, that's true.
So let's move to the southeastern part of the state then. Atoka and McGee Creek are still both, we have not had much rainfall down in that area.
That's correct.
And they're both down around 10 feet?
Yes, I took a little bit more than 10 feet, McGee Creek right at 10 feet. And again, a good example where a soaking rain came in, there was a small amount of runoff into the area, but had well over an inch of rain a couple of times in late February and little benefit to the lakes, maybe an additional half an inch, pardon me, a half a foot in McGee Creek. Also kind of normal for winter rainfalls when the rains are smaller and more frequent. So, March is the time when we are more likely to get some of those gully washers, and hopefully we'll get some relief.
And then Sardis Lake, what level is that at this point?
Sardis Lake's pretty full.
Yeah. And so, and actually, at certain times, water's still going over the runway, the spillways at that point in time. So it's an interesting situation that.
Different basins?
Yes.
It's generally the same part of the state, but yeah, it's the Muddy Boggy and the Clear Boggy basins is McGee Creek and Atoka, which go into the Kiamichi Basin, but they do it quite a way south of Sardis,
Gotcha.
if you will. And so the point being that if we did have the pipeline in from Sardis, that we might be in a situation down there where the lakes would all be down 4 feet or something like that, or 4 or 5 feet instead of the 10 feet. And then we would also have the flexibility to be having a higher rate of water pumped up to Draper, which would allow us to take more water being treated out of the Draper side of the area, which would allow us to take less water out of Hefner, which would mitigate the lake level situation in all Overholser, Hefner, and Canton. So, if it would be, even under this severe drought that we had, the addition of Canton would really, really spread the
Sardis.
the addition of Sardis would really, help all the lakes by having that additional resource tied in.
Mr. Simandy and his team are working on concepts that attempt to look at how we could move water from our different reservoirs. It's a unique situation, potentially being in the southeast, having 3 reservoirs supplying, and how that builds. It's fascinating engineering work, but it's an additional reliability, which Mr. Couch already said. I apologize for being repetitious. So we need more information about rainfall. We're still hoping for great rains, but expecting a dry early summer, March, April, May, June. The forecast remains poor.
Any other questions? Comment.
Mr. Chairman, we had an issue come up this week. The Parks Department and some utility staffs, Mr. Clowers, are working on a program to remove particularly red cedars, but generally to clear land on the south end of Lake Hafner and then to move into Lake Draper, something that Councilman White's been working on for us. This week we learned that the county is in a position to begin helping us remove trees on the south end of Lake Hafner soon. And Commissioner Mon is the person with whom we've communicated about that.
Well, going to a little bit, there's actually a program with the state where we can get inmates and they can actually be trained in forestry, essentially, by being involved in this program, and they'll come in conjunction with oversight with the county, and they'll use these inmates, and it's a state-approved program, to come in and they'll clear the trees out for us with essentially no cost to us.
How will we take the trees down?
They're going to cut them down and grind them up. So they're going to come down. They're not going to cut out the road. They'll just cut it down flush at ground level.
And that works with a red cedar. You can cut them down to ground and they'll die and rot right there. They won't. That's good.
And that has not only they won't be taking up water, they won't be a fire hazard, but they will also help with some security issues that we've had challenges with on that southeast corner of the lake.
Anything else? We're adjourned. Thank you.